Welcome everyone. My name is Helena Kirby and I'm the Mayor of the Golden Plains Shire Council. Tonight this council meeting is taking place from the Golden Plains Civic Centre Council Chambers. However, in light of the current coronavirus situation, it is closed to the public and being presented in a different way via live stream. As Chair of the meeting, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online, in accordance with Section 14 of Council's Governance Rules of 2020. Myself as the Chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority to at any time direct the termination or interruption of the live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop at the conclusion of the meeting. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made available on our website. Those councillors and staff in attendance in person tonight are advised to practice social distancing and the hygiene recommendations of the Department of Health and Human Services. Due to the coronavirus situation, public presentations and submissions will be presented virtually. For those that do not wish to present their public presentations for public question time, a written response will be provided. The maximum 3 minute still applies. Thank you. The opening declaration. We, the councillors of the Golden Plains Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interests of the community and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of the Golden Plains Shire. Council would like to acknowledge the traditional Wadawurrung owners of the land where we meet today. Council pays its respects to the Wadawurrung elders, both past and present, and extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Golden Plains Shire. Apologies and leave of absence. Are there any apologies or leaves of absence? No? Nil, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. Councillors, we have a resolution before us to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 19th of January 2021 as circulated. Can I have a mover? Councillor Rowe. And a seconder, Councillor Getsom. All those in favour? Moved. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a conflict of interest on item 7.4, general conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Whitfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a perceived conflict, I believe, for the Inverleigh Play Space naming, as I chose to take part in the digital vote and vote as a resident on that. So I'll be stepping out for that one. Thanks.
Any other conflicts of interest? No, thank you. Public question time.
As I chose to take part in the digital vote and vote as a...
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
As previously mentioned, any questions submitted for public question time will be presented virtually at tonight's meeting, with all questions not presented to receive a written response. Tonight we have 2 questions in total from Deborah Morrison. regarding the Inverleigh play space naming.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Councillors. My questions relate to the public votes received by Council in relation to item 7.3, naming of the Inverleigh community play space. And my question is, how are individuals that are identified as living outside the municipality allowed to have their votes counted? There are a small number that are well outside the Golden Plain Shire Council boundaries. And question 2 is, how are votes allowed to be counted as valid if the location of the voter is not identified as per the agenda item?
Deborah, I'll get our Director to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the naming rules in relation to question 1, the naming rules for places in Victoria recommends consulting the immediate and extended community when naming or renaming a feature. Votes from individuals outside the municipality may be counted as they are considered to be users of the site. In addition, the form collected voters' current residential address. Whilst currently residing outside the municipality, these voters may also own a property, either an investment or farming, and/or a business within the Shire. So that was in response to question 1. In relation to question 2, whilst the suburb field was not completed by the voter, other information not made public, such as the voter's full name and street name, was supplied on the voting form, enabling Council to determine the validity of the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Director O'Sullivan. Thank you very much for your question tonight, Deborah.
Thank you.
We now move on to consider the formal agenda. There are a number of people who have registered to make a public submission tonight. After the induction of each report, I will call each submitter forward via Zoom. Sorry. In order they have registered to speak. For those presenting, I would like to remind you of your speaking times allocated. Each presenter may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes, and I ask you to respect the time limit, please. To assist presenters this time, a timer will be displayed in front of me. 1 bell will sound when you are nearing the maximum time allowed, and 2 bells will sound when your time has expired. 2 minutes will then be allocated for the councillor to ask questions of the presenter. I note that this is not a time for debate. Item 7.1, the meeting record. Thank you, Mr. Braslis.
Councillors, these are the records from meetings that we've held over the past month. We used to call these assemblies of council. Typically, we would not put these in unless, of course, there was a conflict of interest over the past month. As a result of 2 councillors declaring a conflict at our council briefing, as you will see the attached notes that. So this is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braslis. Do I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Would you like to speak, Councillor Whitfield?
No, thanks. I think it's just an issue of housekeeping.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any councillors who'd like to speak against the motion? Any councillors who'd like to speak for the motion? I put the vote. Those in favour? Carried. (7.2) The Delegates' Report, the 19th of January 2021 to the 22nd of February 2021. Mr. Braslis.
Again, councillors, this is our monthly report listing all the activities and functions that the councillors have attended over the past month.
Thank you. We have a recommendation. So do I have a motion? A mover for the motion?
Madam Mayor, can I just comment, please?
Yes, Councillor.
Just want noted that on my activities for the month, that it's got here on the 22nd of February, Tourism Greater Geelong and Bellarine Planning Day. I was an apology for that day during to work commitments, but we'll be getting an update regarding what happened on that day. So it is noted there that it was a meeting that I attend, but due to work commitments, I was unable to.
Councillor Cunningham. Sorry, Councillor Whitfield, would you have anything to discuss in your past month's activities?
A mover and a seconder.
Sorry, a mover first.
Move the motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sharkey, the seconder. Councillor Whitfield. Mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Forgetting about this microphone, sorry. This delegates reports highlights what we did from mid-January to now, and appreciating it sort of set out in a different format there with all the extra things that we've done. So as councillors, hopefully this table or this format isn't something that one can use to sort of say whether somebody has a tick or hasn't got a tick. I think every councillor here has done an awful lot over the last month to turn up to all of those events. There has been a considerable amount of events and community engagement over the past month. So looking at each and every councillor's what they've done for the month is an extremely well worded list of events that people have done, from Australia Day right to the Coffee with a Councillor Day on the weekend, where we've engaged with a lot of people. So very detailed. As I said, first time I've done that table. Hopefully it's not a point scoring exercise, as councillors will have moments during the year where they probably won't have as many ticks as what they have there, but congratulations to each and every councillor, really well represented on that list. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I might just give a bit of a report on the G21 planning pillar that I attended. Just a quick snapshot of what happened there. The delegates deferred choosing a chair and deputy chair. There were reports on priority projects provided. Some of these are that at Avalon, they're looking into a structure plan around the airport to develop an employment precinct and public acquisition for a railway station at Avalon. The Northern and Western Geelong Growth Area draft precinct structure plans are expected to be available September the 21st. Bowen Water has given in-principle support of these drafts. The city is to enter an agreement with Dawes for a C10 assessment, which is, I believe, about protection of environment and fauna, etc. The City of Greater Geelong is partnering with Deakin Uni to try and achieve zero carbon development. Alcoa are exploring whether their groundwater licence can top up their needs. In the Spring Creek Urban Growth Area, they are undertaking a distinctive areas and landscape project. This area will provide Surf Coast Shire with about 12 years of land supply. The Colac 2050 plan is assuming 12 to 20,000 population growth, with the focus areas being to their west. They have a grant application in to help with the planning process, as there is currently a shortfall of land, and they estimate they only have about 2 or 3 years of growth in their boundaries at the moment. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Whitfield. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Gamble, thank you.
I did update to the CEO Secretary about some extra events I attended, but it hasn't been updated there yet. A couple of things that I attended recently include the Tamil Thai Pongal Harvest Festival, which was at January the 23rd, Saturday, at the Garibaldi Hall. The main organiser was from Ballarat, and it was a day to thank our farmers and nature. It was quite a unique sort of event. It was backed by the Ballarat Regional Multicultural Council and the Melbourne Tamil community. It was attended by the Ballarat Councillor Ben Taylor as well. We both spoke and welcomed people to the event, etc. One of the speakers, a Tamil speaker from Melbourne, he was particularly strong in how important agriculture and farming and food production is in Tamil culture. So they were very keen to have this event, and they were very glad that I welcoming that I attended, and so I volunteered to attend their planning meetings in the future. Also, I attended the climate emergency. The group's called CACE, C-A-C-E, council and community actioning the climate emergency. That was a webinar that was held a couple of weeks ago. The Climate Emergency Declaration Councils started in 2016. It was the first in the world at Darebin, but now there is, they look at local government as being leaders in this issue, in this concern, and from one single council, it's now been adopted or taken off around the world, and there's 826 million people that are under this climate change emergency declaration. In Australia, it's over 8.5 million people. In local governments, including governments such as Mildura, Shepparton, Warrnambool, Geelong, City of Moyne. In the seminar, the webinar, they outlined the bad and the good. They looked at some of the issues. Just briefly, it was a fairly quick sort of overview of the whole situation, where it's viewed like a slow-moving tsunami and with unpredictable runaway effects as well. At 1.1 degree warming that we have at the moment, we can expect to see Bangladesh going underwater, 1 to 4 metres sea level rise, Pacific Islands gone, and unless we act and take serious action around the world, it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse a lot quicker. The good news are that there are solutions, and part of this, the main thrust of this seminar was to advice about how we go about it and how local government climate emergency toolkit is promoted. This item has been downloaded 3,000 times in 3 months, and it recognises that all councils are different and one has to be responsive to the local community circumstances. It's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. Well, basically, we already have a financial liability, so the costs have to be considered in that respect. And we also need to think about our place in history. That's the main thrust of this webinar. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble. I'm sure we'd all love zero emissions within Australia in all levels of government and councils, so it's something that we probably need to strive for our future generations. So something maybe even we can look at down the track, having a few people come and speak in council and get some things on our agenda. So we look forward to it, Councillor Gamble. Anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Getson?
No, I just attended, also on there I did attend the Haddon Australia Day event. Yes. And unfortunately I'm unable to have a hot chocolate with the clients on Saturday, so I was having apple juice in hospital, unfortunately.
You're doing very well to be here tonight, Councillor Getson, so we'll take it easy on you. Thank you, Councillor Getson. Any other councillors like to speak? No? All right. I've had quite a busy month. Sorry, I just was trying to find my notes and I can't find them on the computer there. But we've had lots of meetings with ministers where we've put forward a lot of recommendations that council would like to see happen in the future. Oh, thank you. I included the active ageing and inclusion plan conversations around in Daryl. I also had an introductory meeting with Centacare from Ballarat regarding social housing. Attended some of the Australia Day events, which were very well attended considering COVID was on. I think all the organisers would be very pleased on the attendance there. The Cape Clear Australia Day Award event that was held of an evening, so good on Cape Clear because we had a pretty full-on day as councillors where we had to try and attend a couple of breakfasts on the way to our Australia Day events here in council, and so it was actually very good to be able to participate in a late afternoon event. So it was just good to be able to spread ourselves around. We've also met with the Berrybank Wind Farm Community Engagement Committee meeting. Once again, they will be starting stage 2 of the Berrybank Wind Farm. So they've been looking for extra people in the community to come on board on their committee. And hopefully we'll have a few more dollars coming back into council that we'll be able to put into some great projects. Some of those projects for the future include the Smythesdale, Scarsdale and Linton streetscapes. So something to look forward to for those residents out in that neck of the woods. I had a teleconference with Sarah Henderson. So we had some very important issues to discuss there, and also a meeting with Andy Medic here in the council chambers, a virtual meeting with Libby Coker that was cut short because she was in Parliament, but I'm sure we'll catch up with Libby Coker sometime soon. And the Minister Lean, where we had a meeting with him and 5 other representatives from the state government, with Michaela Settle being another person on the virtual screen that was present. We had some very good discussions regarding the Councillor Code of Conduct. We also spoke about the rating, what's happened in the ratings. So we found that because of COVID, it was very hard for the state government to really come down hard or look at a lot of different submissions that were put forward. So I think there'll be another time and place for those sort of things in the next couple of years. It is disappointing because I'm sure that we'd all love to see our rates just come out of GST, for example, instead of us all having to pay it out of our pockets. So at the end of the day, we're all rate payers, and we all have a lot of rates to pay. But it was disappointing in another way that we couldn't actually find a different way forward for the rating structure. Other than that, I think I've said enough. Thank you. Okay. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 7.3, the Inverleigh place-based naming consultation results. Thank you, Director Philippa O'Sullivan.
Madam Mayor. At the December 2020 Council meeting, Council endorsed the following names for public consultation for the Inverleigh play space, being Lee River Park, Inverleigh Community Park, Inverleigh Play Park and Yerram Yellowkbun, using the voting method as suggested by the Office of Geographic Names. Voting was open to all residents of the Golden Plains Shire between Wednesday 16th of December 2020 and Friday the 29th of January 2021. A total of 120 votes were received, with Yerram Yellowkbun receiving the highest number of votes. A summary of all votes received have been provided for councillors' information in attachment 1. It is recommended that council receive the voting results and consider any submissions and objections prior to making a final determination on the name at the March 2021 council meeting. Thank you.
O'Sullivan. Do we have a mover? Councillor Sharkey. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is a straightforward one. We've had a question tonight on this, and I'm sure all those people that have taken part in their consultation and others will be in touch with us over the next week, next month, and we'll hear from the objectors coming forward. It comes as no surprise there that the results coming back cut into 4 pretty much quarters. So, no absolute clear and definite deciding one there. So, again, what will probably be a tough decision for council, because whatever decision is made in a month's time will ultimately upset a few people, but we need to make these decisions and move on. So we're still part of the consultation period, and be interesting to hear from those people over the coming weeks and their submissions next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing else to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any councillors who'd like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Can you run out the room? Yes. The outcome is that it's been accepted and moved to the next meeting after we hear back from the register. Thank you. Item 7.4, P2106 36 Oxley Rise, Batesford, for a 2-lot subdivision and covenant variation. Thank you. Sharkey, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Josipovic. P2106 Oxley Rise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bit of distraction. This report relates to a planning permit application for the development of land for the purpose of a 2-lot subdivision and variation of covenant at 36 Oxley Rise, Batesford. Excuse me. The report was originally presented to the 15th of December 2020 Ordinary Council meeting for a decision. However, Council deferred the matter to the February Ordinary meeting at the request of the applicant. Since the December Council meeting, the applicant has submitted an application to amend the development plan applying to the land. The report before you provides a background to the application and a summary of the relevant planning considerations. The councillors have been provided with a full copy of the application and objectives for consideration prior to making a decision. The proposed subdivision will create 2 lots of similar size, being Lot 1, 4,004 square metres, and Lot 2, 4,001 square metres. The application also proposes to vary the covenant affecting the property. It is proposed to vary the section which prohibits the construction of more than one dwelling on the land. The covenant must be varied to allow the construction of additional dwellings on the vacant lots resulting from the subdivision, should it be approved. Since the matter was deferred at the December Council meeting, as I mentioned, the applicant has submitted an application to amend the development plan. The application consists of a spot development plan applying only to the subject land and proposing the subdivision of the land into 2 lots consistent with the planning application proposal. Notice of the application was given in accordance with the requirements of the Planning and Environment Act. It was also given by mail to 33 owners and occupiers of land benefiting from the covenant, as well as by placing a sign on the land and by placing an advertisement in the Saturday editions of the Geelong Advertiser newspaper. As a result of the public notice, 4 objections were received. One of the 4 objecting parties is a covenant beneficiary. As mentioned, the objectors concerned relate to precedent, neighbourhood character, drainage impacts, integrity issues and breach of the Section 173 agreement into as part of the original subdivision development. As mentioned, the applicant has submitted the application to amend the development plan. Council officers recommend against approving the amended development plan because it is considered to be contrary to the provisions of Development Plan Overlay Schedule 11, which seek to prevent further subdivision of the land. Clause 2 of Schedule 11 demonstrates a clear intent to prevent further subdivision of the land through the requirement of a Section 173 agreement to assure no further subdivision. The Development Plan Overlay requires that a development plan be prepared for the land and that any permit to subdivide land must be generally in accordance with the development plan. The current development plan was approved by Council on the 6th of April 2018 and depicts the subdivision layout and designates the lot sizes. The subject land is shown on the development plan as having an area of 8,000 square metres. The planning application and application to amend the development plan are not considered to satisfy the provisions of the planning scheme, in particular the provisions of the Development Plan Overlay Schedule 11, which can be found at clause 43.04, because the proposed subdivision is not in accordance with the development plan that applies to the land. It is therefore recommended that the application be refused.
Thank you, Mr. Sipovic. We have a public presentation. Mr. Tim Sherrington, who is the applicant. Thank you.
Hi councillors, how are you going? Firstly, I'd just like to provide a bit of background on our application, just quickly give you some context in terms of our family situation and what our intentions were with the block. I'm here sitting with my wife and my brother Jackson and his wife Caitlin in the background, and kids are being quiet at the minute, but we just wanted to make clear, which some of you councillors are already aware, that we are just two families that are related that have bought this block with all our due diligence done and completed that showed that a subdivision was possible subject to council the council vote or whatnot. But the I guess the all we're really looking for is to be treated fairly. We understand there's been some complications around a section 173 that doesn't exist, and the development plan, and some conjecture around whether what we're doing is in accordance with that. I guess I'll speak more to that in a second when I read out our actual written submission. But we're just looking, to be really heard fairly. We understand that the development plan for the particular Riverstone estate has been amended numerous times by the developer as the estate's evolved, and what we're doing in terms of trying to do a two-lot subdivision, keeping obviously over 4,000 square metres each, is not going to be detrimental to anyone in the estate, and this was reflected during the advertising period when we didn't receive any objections from neighbours or beneficiaries of our covenant. So we as I reinforced, we just want to be treated fairly and in line with how another case and many before us have been treated, like the Glenhaven Bannockburn case back in December that you all heard and approved. We see our case is essentially identical to that, and we've done everything we can throughout the whole application process since when I initially spoke with Sandra Tomic back in February last year, that nothing was flagged then of concern apart from needing to get all beneficiaries of our covenant to, I guess, oblige or accept the variation covenant that we're trying to do, and we've done that, and I think that's reflected in council's report that you've all received. Probably to keep things as short as I possibly can, I'll read out our written submission that was forwarded to you all today, and then I've got my legal representative David King to sort of follow on from that.
Mr. Sherrington, will it take long? Is it?
It shouldn't. I can rush through the written submission. I mean,
If you can just make it very short, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. This submission is written in conjunction with the original submission dated the 14th of December. Post the December council meeting, which deferred the hearing of the application as council presented new information on the day of the hearing, which was the 2012 and 2016 endorsed development plan. A spot development plan amendment application was submitted to council for review. This submission was encouraged by council planning staff during conversations with with the property owner, us, and our legal representative David King. The development plan satisfies the requirements for a development plan as set out in Schedule 11 to the development plan overlay. The requirements are addressed as follows. All residential development must be serviced with seal roads. The Riverstone estate is serviced by seal roads. A concrete footpath to the satisfaction of the responsible authority must be provided along at least one side of each proposed road with the subdivision and the entire extent of Hills Road. Concrete footpaths are present on one side of each road. Hills Road must be upgraded to a 6.2 metre seal width. I'll skip through the rest of that. Hills Road upgrade has been completed to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, And the last item was a section 173 agreement to apply to all lots, ensuring that no further subdivision is permitted. A section 173 agreement can be applied to both lots, ensuring that no further subdivision is permitted with our proposal. The further assessment notes the 2-lot subdivision application was submitted with a land capability assessment, which details that the site can cater for the additional allotment. From a planning perspective, there is nothing that suggests this will be a poor outcome or out of character. If it were, council would not be seeking to approve the covenant variation component of the application. Indefeasibility of title applies. The owner is entitled to rely on his title as showing all encumbrances. Further subdivision is not restricted on the subject title and other titles within this stage of the subdivision. There are 5 other titles which the section 173 agreement preventing further subdivision was not applied to. However, only one of those, 35 Oxley Rise, our neighbour, has the required 8,000 square metres, which would permit an application for subdivision. The subdivision
Thank you, Mr. Sherrington. I think that'll do. I will take it as read because it has all been forwarded to the councillors this afternoon. So we do thank you for your time. Is there any questions, councillors? No questions. All right, thank you, Mr. Sherrington. We'll now hear Mr. David King, the lawyer for the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll be very quick. I just want to point out a few facts and then talk to the report. Obviously, the council's the decision maker tonight as the responsible authority. We say the officer's role is to fairly report the application and make recommendations. Council is at liberty to question any report and then decide to either adopt the recommendation or amend the recommendation or to defer it. We suggest don't defer it, it's already been deferred and we've complied with the requests of the officers. I think it's important to recognise that there's 2 separate issues here and 2 separate applications. And the first is for the approval of a spot development plan, and the second is for a subdivision permit and a variation of restrictive covenant. Mr. Brasilis outlined the council's report in regards to that. And generally, I say that report shows that the subdivision is okay, as in form, content, etc., and that the variation of the covenant is okay. The hiccup in the officer's report is that the subdivision is not in accordance, or generally in accordance, with the approved development plan. Now, the mixing comes in that if you were to approve the development plan for the reasons that have already been submitted, you could do that by simply stating that you believe it complies with Schedule 11 and pass a resolution. That would be resolution number 1. That then means the development plan the subdivision's being assessed against would be the new development plan, the 2-lotter, and you are absolutely generally in accordance with it. And that's the process that was done back in December last year on a similar type of issue. So then there's a bit more confusion in that to approve the development plan, you need to comply with the schedule, and that was outlined by Mr. Brazils. But it needs to be carefully read. Clause 2 of the development plan are conditions that are required to be granted on a permit. So if you're granting a permit, which would be the second resolution here, to grant a subdivision, that's when you're required to have a 173 agreement. There is absolutely no requirement for a 173 agreement for the approval of the development plan. Now, the development plan requirements are set out in clause 3 of the schedule, and there is just no reference to a 173. Now, the council of the report says there's an intent that there should be no subdivision. Well, that's one way of putting it, but the actual controls that you should be considering have no reference to the requirement for 173. So if you approve the development plan, the spot development plan, then you're at liberty to then decide that you think the merits of the subdivision and the restrictive covenant can be done. But if you do grant a permit, it must contain a condition on the 173. So basically, that would be the process if you wanted to approve it. Very quickly, can I share a screen showing the development plans?
Yes, that'll be fine. You've got 1 minute left.
Thank you. All my notes, the council officers say that a current development plan shows 8,000 square metres. We put it that there is no current development plan. There are 5 development plans for this subdivision, and that's allowable. The zone allows it. So this is the first development plan back in 2009, and that shows the subdivision and shows our lots as being 2 lots of 4,000 square metres. So that's the original one approving the whole of the area. And that's the staging plan that was attached to that plan. The next plan that was approved, sorry, I won't waste time changing the orientation, but this is purports to be a development plan. You'll see there it's actually an endorsed plan under the planning permit for a subdivision. But I think the council officers have referred to it as a development plan. It looks like a development plan, it smells like a development plan. And the important part is, all this is blacked out. This is the development plan you're approving in 2012, which is the next stage or version. And that shows our client's lot being 8,000 square metres. Now, you've jumped from 4,000 to 8,000 and you've approved this, and so what we say is this is being considered to be generally in accordance with the development plan. And so if it's possible to go from if it's possible to go from 4,000 square metres on the original plan and say that that's generally in accordance, we say you could do exactly the same this time and go back to 4,000. And if I just take you through the rest of the plans, here's the next stage, a 2006 plan, and you'll see that all of that area, which was done on the previous plan, is blacked out and says completed stages, and there's a dash around the proposed stages. So that's your 2016 plan, and then there's a 2018 plan which is referred to in the council officer's report, and again you'll see very poorly, but down here there's a subject land, and this applies to the next stage, and there's the red lines there. And so that's all that it applies to. And so what I'm saying is there are 5 plans, and each stage moves on one. What we're saying is 2 things. You could form the same view that a subdivision now is still generally consistent with the original one, because these plans are just simply showing what has been approved previously. They're not the development plans. So there's 5 development plans, they're all valid, they all relate to a certain area. And therefore you take one more step and you approve this proposed spot development plan. That won't cancel anything out. It will be a spot development plan, will be plan number 6 or 7, and your subdivision will be consistent with it, and it will comply with the DPO schedules requiring 173. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. King.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Whitfield.
Madam Mayor. Hello, Mr. King. You mentioned the original lot size as being 4,000 square metres, and then reverting back to the current 8,000. Is it possible, I might be corrected by the director, but as part of these development plan considerations that land capability is taken into account, and that's why that lot was at 8,000?
Yeah, look, I can't guess why it went to the 8,000, but what I can say is that my instructions, and from what I've seen of the application, there was a land capability assessment provided for this development showing that it works. I'll just probably say that the purposes of a development overlay is to provide sort of extreme flexibility. You set the parameters out, and they're all, there's 2 or 3 pages of all the different things that you need to do, ensure that drainage and cultural heritage and vegetation and everything is okay. Now that's all been done to get to the first stage, and each subsequent plan has worked off those main issues of cultural heritage, land capability, etc. The flexibility, and that's why it says generally in accordance, allows you a fair bit of room to move. Best example is when you went from the original stage 1 or overall approved development plan to the next stage. It went to 8,000, and that's fine. And each stage has had variations. Some have got bigger, some have got smaller.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, no other questions. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay, councillors.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Rowe?
And I'd like to move, sorry, I'll just take the mask off. I'd like to move an alternative motion, Madam Mayor, a motion to a notice of decision to grant a permit. And I'll read it out. The council resolves to, number 1, approve the amended development plan entitled Spot Development Plan Amendment, Revision 2, prepared by St Quentin Consulting, dated the 29th of the 1st, 2020. Number 2, issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit, P20-106, for the development of a 2-lot subdivision and variation to the restricted covenant, AK191651C, at 36 Oxley Rise, Batesford, subject to the following conditions. You want me to read all the conditions out? There's 17 of them. Or do you want to just put them up on the screen?
A copy has been circulated, Councillor Rose, so that'll be fine. You don't
happy,
have to
Madam
read them
Mayor?
out. Yes, thank
with
you.
those 17 conditions attached to this to this decision?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a seconder to Councillor Rose. Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Would you like to speak, Councillor Rowe?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. As you all know, this is a 2-lot subdivision and variation of a covenant at 36 Oxley Rise, Batesford. This was brought to a previous council meeting on the 15th of December. However, was deferred to allow the applicant time to present a council a spot development plan applying only to the subject land. This plan was presented to officers. Notice was given at the time to the owners and occupiers of the land benefiting from the covenant. Only one objector is a covenant beneficiary. I am satisfied, and so is the original council, that the sole beneficiary will be unlikely to suffer financial loss of amenity from change to the character of the neighbourhood or any other material detriment as a consequence of the removal of the variation of the covenant. The application was lodged on the 29th of April 2020. The application was initially referred to Council's Works and Environment Health Departments. These parties had no objection to the issue of a permit, subject to conditions being placed on the permit. The site and surrounding land is in a low-density residential zone. The low-density residential zone sets a minimum size of 4,000 square metres. The 2 lots, when subdivided, will be greater than 4,000 square metres. The subject land was created via a subdivision permitted by a planning permit P11-175, and it was called the 2011 permit. If you have had a chance to view this subdivision plan, it clearly shows a 4,000 square metre allotment on this particular parcel of land in discussion at the moment. A condition of the 2011 permit required a 173 agreement, specifying that each of the lots created by the subdivision could not be further subdivided. However, the agreement was not registered on title. Council's lawyer has advised that the agreement is unenforceable against the current owners of the land, as it is not recorded on the title, and the current owners are not party to the agreement. Further, the agreement cannot be recorded on title in its current form because it is expressed to apply to land in a certificate of title that has been cancelled. The concerns regarding drainage impacts from the additional development from the variation of covenant would not affect the capacity and the functionality of the drainage network. Council's Works Department require that stormwater runoff from each dwelling is directed to a legal point of discharge and that appropriate works be carried out to ensure that stormwater runoff does not impact downstream properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing else to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion? Thank you. Councillor Gamble?
Thank you, Mayor. In my assessment, I've gone back to more first principles of why there are only supposed to be 100 lots in this estate, and there's now 167 now. And that's the environmental considerations. The Moorabool River is one of the most flow-stressed rivers in Victoria. It's a dying system. Unless we conserve it, we're going to leave a terrible legacy. More subdivisions will only make it worse. I'm not sure the environment team were consulted by the planning department. I believe they should have been. There are general provisions for as part of the development plan in the planning scheme, clause 65.01, that require council to consider factors likely to reduce water quality. Extra subdivisions will effectively do that. Also, an objecting group has raised the potential presence of cultural artefacts on or near the site. Has this also been addressed or considered by the planning department? I objected to this, to the setting aside of the Glen Avon Estate covenant, but this proposal is different again because it is directly above flow-wise and will potentially lead to the further degradation and damage to the Moorabool River. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for the alternative motion? No. Anyone against? I will put it to the vote. Those in favour? Oh, sorry. Councillor Rowe, if you'd like to sum up. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say, Madam Mayor, you know well, as councillors, we have approved these small lot subdivisions of 4,000 square metres minimum in the past in many areas of the Shire, including Batesford, Bannockburn, Teesdale and Lethbridge. The officers in my book have made this one of the most difficult applications for councillors to get their head around, especially the fresh incoming ones. The sole reason being is the oversight by a person or persons within council to register a 173 agreement on the actual title. We seem to have one objector to this subdivision. The developer that when first submitted the original plans for the Riverstone estate detailed a total of 100 blocks. The number today has blown out to 163 lots, due mainly to changes within the planning scheme. I don't think one more will make a huge difference. As a councillor, I am asking you, my fellow councillors, to support this recommendation this evening and for these two young brothers to establish everyone's dream and build a house on each lot for their families to enjoy now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Cunningham?
Nothing else to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Sharkey. We've just had the vote and it's been, an alternative motion has been put in place and it's been voted in favour of. So, thank you. Item 7.5, P2133 15 Gurney Close, Bannockburn, the use of land for domestic animal husbandry and the keeping of 5 dogs. Thank you, Director.
Madam Mayor, this report relates to a planning permit application for the use of land for domestic animal husbandry at the address, as you mentioned, 15 Gurney Close, Bannockburn. The application has been referred to council meeting for determination because there are objections to the application. The report before you provides a background to the application and a summary of the relevant planning considerations. Councillors have been provided with a full copy of the application and objections for consideration prior to making a decision. The site is located within the low density residential zone and is subject to a design and development overlay schedule 5 and development plan overlay schedule 6. The land surrounding the site is primarily developed with the dwelling and outbuildings and is also zoned low density res zone. A planning permit is triggered under the following clauses of the Golden Plains planning scheme. Clause 3203(1), use of the land for domestic animal husbandry as more than 2 animals are proposed to be kept. And clause 32.03-4, a permit is required to construct or carry out works associated with the section 2 use. It should be noted there are no building and works required to be completed. This is a retrospective application and the existing fencing and area will be utilised as shown in the photos provided within the report. The permit applicant and owner of the property is a member of the Australian Association of Pet Dog Breeders, and the application submitted has provided additional detail regarding the running of the business. The proposed use is considered appropriate within its context, with the areas designated within the existing dwelling and yard, which is fenced off. The zone triggers a planning permit as a section 2 use for more than 2 dogs, and the maximum number of dogs for the use as stated within the table of the zone provision states that must be no more than 5 animals. There is no potential for the proposal to expand. The recommendation also includes a condition relating to the number of litters per year. Any change to this in the future would require an amendment, which would be required to be advertised to adjoining properties. The conditions recommended will ensure the proposed use will have minimal effect on the amenity of the area and complies with orderly planning of the area. Notice of the application was given in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act and provided by mail to all adjoining and neighbouring owners. A sign was placed on site and the application information was placed on Council's website. As a result of the notice, 10 objections were received. The main concerns raised by the objectors relates to noise, impact on the amenity of the area and general issues around dog breeding such as more dogs than the market might demand and puppy farm breeding practices. The recommendation is to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit to allow for the use and development of the land for domestic animal husbandry. Whilst 10 objections to the application were received, the proposal is consistent with relevant planning policy and officers recommend that the application be approved subject to the conditions attached to the report.
Thank you, Director. Any questions? Councillors? Councillor Whitfield?
Madam Mayor. Director Josipovic, the report states that the business has operated for some time without complaints about noise and odours.
My understanding, yes.
And is it correct that if complaints are received in the future that there are conditions to the permit that would require particular actions to be taken and the possible review of the permit?
There are amenity conditions within the permit and they are enforceable, absolutely.
Field. Any other questions, councillors? None? All right. Councillors, it is noted that Ms Weaker has not requested to speak. However, she has requested that councillors please take into consideration her objection. I ensure Ms Weaker that any and all submissions received in relation to town planning applications are made available to councillors prior to council's determination, and as such it will not be read out tonight. So the recommendation is before us, councillors. Do I have a mover to the motion? Councillor Whitfield. Do I have a seconder?
Motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sharkey, thank you. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak?
Madam Mayor. Our staff, council officers have applied the rules of the planning scheme to this application and concluded that it should be allowed. I note that there are conditions applied to the permit that deal with noise and odour, and that if there were complaints about the noise and odour going forward, that an acoustic engineer report would be required, and thereafter for the business to continue, it must be shown that those measures required in the report are implemented to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. I believe the conditions imposed on the permit allow for the business to go ahead. Thanks.
Good. Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I strongly support the words of Councillor Whitfield in regards to supporting this recommendation. Also appreciate for us as councillors, there was a lot of conversation on this one with the amount of dogs that are potentially kept here. Reading this report, there has, as Councillor Whitfield has highlighted there has been no objections by the neighbours in the past couple of years. The applicants here have done the right thing by presenting themselves to council to get a retrospective permit put in place here. So I don't feel that which was the strongest objections from the neighbours was around noise and the fear of that. I strongly believe that our officers, and having followed up on a couple of previous complaints from dogs, particularly in Bannockburn over the last couple of years, officers have done a fantastic job of mitigating those situations. So I strongly support this recommendation, and definitely fits within the planning scheme, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion? Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, I do share concerns of some of the objectors, particularly those who live close to the proposed location. Taking into account the size of the proposed area, which already has an existing building and outbuilding, and the proximity to neighbouring properties, I believe there's a very likelihood of real concerns that objectors have of excessive noise pollution, and there was no real information regarding removal of waste from the proposed facility, and just have concerns about the increased number of dogs to be kept on that property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for? Anyone against? I'll put the vote. Those in favour?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. We have someone to close the debate.
Sorry, Councillor Whitfield, if you'd like to close.
I'll just reiterate that it does fall within the planning scheme, and there are measures going forward if people found issues. They have rights as well. I believe this business fits within the planning scheme and therefore should be allowed. Thank you.
Whitfield. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Call for a division there, Madam Mayor, please.
Councillor Sharkey's called for a division, so we'll just redo the vote. Those in favour? Everyone except Councillor Getsom, Councillor Sharkey, Councillor Rowe, Councillor Gamble, Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Kirby. Those against? Councillor Cunningham. Thank you. Item 7.6, the Active Ageing and Inclusion Plan 2020 to 2024 adoption. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the Active Ageing and Inclusion Plan signals a commitment by Council to support all people in the community to thrive and to fully participate in community life across the Shire. It also meets Council's obligations under the Disability Act 2006 that requires all government organisations to have a disability action plan or similar that identifies actions to remove physical, civic and attitudinal barriers for people with a disability. The draft Active
Ageing and Inclusion Plan was placed on public exhibition for 6 weeks between December and January 2021. 33 submissions were received during that time, both through in-person engagements and online. Key themes arising from the feedback validated the proposed actions, particularly in relation to increasing transport options, increasing activities for older adults, and improving access to information about services. Specific feedback received requesting changes to the document have been addressed, including updating the image of the Shire to represent more communities, removal of reference to the medical model of disability, reviewing and bringing forward some of the timeframes and acknowledging those actions that have been commenced and therefore are listed as ongoing. Pleasingly, the community engagement about the draft plan also generated interest in the Disability Action Committee, and as a consequence, new members were welcomed at the most recent meeting. This group, along with an internal working group, will provide oversight of the delivery of the plan. We're really pleased to present the draft plan to you tonight, and the recommendation is that Council adopt the Active Ageing and Inclusion Plan 2020 to 2024.
Thank you, Director-elect. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Whitfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Lettick, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the various aspects of the plan are achieved in the times prescribed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In addition to the Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee that's made up of community members, service providers and council staff, they'll provide oversight of the plan and hold us to account in the delivery of that. There's also an internal working group that's been created to ensure that all areas across the whole of council are aware of the commitments in the plan and are proactively working to achieve the actions. An evaluation tool is being developed, and the progress of the plan will be reported to council at least annually. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No? If not, do I have a mover? Councillor Whitfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm for the adoption of this plan as it's been through a thorough community consultation process. I was pleased to see that the inclusion of some of that feedback has directly impacted the plan. In some areas, to name a few, transportation, accessibility, developing programs to improve digital literacy and things like that. It's also noted that it is both a Fed and state government requirement for this plan to go ahead. And I look forward to seeing this plan come to fruition over the next few years. Thank you.
Whitfield. Councillor Cunningham, would you like to speak?
Concur with Councillor Whitfield's words there. Once again, the community feedback was very positive about the plan, and a lot of people commented about it was a good initiative by council, and I know a lot of people took the opportunity to submit their thoughts, and it was good. No, that's about all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion? Anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? If not, would you like to close the debate, Councillor Whitfield?
What I need to. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. .7 Finance Quarter 2 update. Director O'Sullivan, thank you.
Madam Mayor. As at the 31st of December 2020, the income statement reports a total operating revenue of $36.8 million and a total operating expenditure of $21.1 million, which results in a year-to-date surplus of $15.6 million, which is $5.4 million favourable against our original budget and $2.5 million favourable against our revised budget. This is primarily due to $417,000 in higher rates and charges revenue, which is than budgeted due to higher levels of growth in customers than estimated, $425,000 in operating grants carried forward from 2019-20 due to the timing of performance obligations being met after the 30th of June 2020, $330,000 lower user fees and charges, which is due to the reduction in childcare fees stemming from a reduction in enrolments and also in relation to COVID-19 related closures of community centres. We had $259,000 higher income, other income, due to public open space and development contributions due to greater development activity than anticipated, and also $140,000 related to the Bannockburn Bowls upgrade contribution payment received in 2021 but budgeted for 2019-20. I'll also note that contracts and material costs are $775,000 lower than revised budget. One reason for this is due to the Bannockburn Children's Services redundancy payments were budgeted against this line item, but the actual costs were actually allocated to employee costs. But it also should be noted the redundancy costs are lower than budget due to a number of resignations that had occurred prior to the redundancies being taken place, and as a result it was $250,000 less. Employee costs are also tracking $1.2 million lower. This is a result of savings in vacant positions, but also due to employee leave being lower than budgeted, which has been a bit of a mixture with the vacancies in roles and also due to COVID-19. And I'll also note that due to the use of, there's been lower maintenance costs of facilities due to the decreased use of our facilities as well. Also noting that the capital works statement indicates a total capital works expenditure of $6.7 million, being $0.02 million below the original budget and $2 million below our revised budget. However, we have delivered 77% of our year-to-date revised budget, and it includes projects totalling $6.5 million rolled forward from 2021, which were related to projects that spanned a number of years. A number of projects that have been completed include local road resealing projects and a number of others listed within the capital report. The quarterly report was also provided to our Audit and Risk Committee on the 9th of February 2021, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Dr. O'Sullivan. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Whitfield?
Madam Mayor, I have several, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine.
Director O'Sullivan, you mentioned in there that employee costs are down due to, among other things, there's less leave being taken, and that has contributed to our favourable overall position. Would it be correct to assume, though, that down the track that may have some negative effects? And could you speak to that, please?
Councillor Whitfield. That's correct. The reducing of excessive leave balance has been a key focus of our CEO and is a standing agenda item on our senior management team meetings each month, because excessive leave balances not only increases our organisational liability, but it's also important from a staff health and wellbeing perspective that they do take leave over the year and as they require it. One of the greatest challenges for small councils like ours is that when staff take leave, that the work that they do needs to be undertaken by other staff member who's already working at full capacity. We are, as senior management, always looking into options on how we can backfill these roles to ensure that our services to the community are not impacted. Thanks.
Thank you. On another matter, the Three Trails project that was part of the Council Plan 2017-2021 says it was to have 500,000 funding plus 180k from the wind farm, but it doesn't say that in this report. It says that there's a 70,000 shortfall to be made up from savings on other projects. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Whitfield. So that does need to be amended, and it will be fixed in the next report to Council. But the initial project was established in May 2016, with funds being provided through two avenues: the 13,000 from a rail trail community contribution and 57,000 from council contribution, which was rolled forward from the 2016-17 year and into the 17-18 year. As a result, the 70,000 is currently sitting in our accumulated surpluses and will be used to fund the project, and the comment will be updated accordingly.
Thank you, Director O'Sullivan. One last one. Regarding the gravel pit rehabilitation, it says in there we're putting aside 70,000 in this budget, 60,000 in the previous. I was just wondering about the running balance on that, and because I couldn't see that in this report. Thanks.
Councillor Whitfield. Yeah, so the non-current liability of the gravel pit rehabilitation relates to the amounts required to rehabilitate that in future years, and therefore is sitting as a non-current liability of around 700,000. and this will be funded through our cash assets. So within our assets, we have, in our current assets, we have cash assets, which are included in short-term investments that are invested to receive interest until we're required to draw that down to be used. A specific reserve has not been set up in this case, as the amounts are less than $1 million, while in other aspects, our landfill tip rehabilitation has a dedicated waste management reserve under equity, which sits in our balance sheet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No other questions? Okay, do we have a mover? Councillor Sharkey? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe? Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd taken a few notes going through this report, but as Councillor Whitfield's asking the questions there, I just stopped and thought to myself that, and I think I was reading today, or was it yesterday, marks 365 days since the first case of COVID hit Australia. It is absolutely astonishing to read through this report, and 12 months ago you would never have thought that this report would read like this. It's an absolute credit to everyone, both at local government, state and federal, how we have come 12 months on into COVID there. So quite interesting that the numbers are the way they are, and quite favourable in areas given COVID. Disappointing and happy to see the extra growth that we are seeing in the area has resulted in that $259,000 extra income to council through the developer contribution, which has ceased now, and we won't see that the next report, which is extremely disappointing, because that sum of money is a huge amount of money, and that's really a significant amount of money that council needs to help with growth. Growth is both a positive and a negative, and to turn it from a negative to a positive takes funds. So there's a considerable amount of money that won't be there the next time that a report comes to us. This has gone through the Audit and Risk Committee, and they have given its tick of approval. And also further elaborating on Councillor Whitfield's question to staff, I think it's also full credit that this time last year, as we went into that first wave, it is worth re-highlighting that staff here in the organisation took a 20% pay cut during that period. So that has definitely helped with those figures as well. And again, to all the staff that have done that, full credit to each and every one of you, because it has helped in delivering services right across the Shire. So again, for me, that's a 1 year post-COVID quarterly report is astounding. Thank you very much.
Councillor Sharkey. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Sharkey's gone to the nuts and bolts of the show. Look, I'd just like to thank the officers for this financial report, like the financial manager and the results from the reporting quarter. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Is there any councillor who'd like to speak against the motion? Any councillor who'd like to speak for the motion? Councillor Whitfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add that, echoing Councillor Sharkey's comments, it makes it even more remarkable that we are in a significant surplus at this point, and well done to the team for achieving that. Thanks.
Councillor Whitfield. Sharkey, would you like to close the debate?
I don't think there's much of a debate there, Madam Mayor. Happy to close it then.
I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Local Government Performance Reporting Indicators, the Quarter 1 and 2 report for 2021. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, the council is required under the Local Government Act 2020 and the Regulations 2020 to report on its performance in accordance with the Local Government Performance Reporting Framework. Council's performance against the LGPRF measures is reported to management, the Audit and Risk Committee and Council on a 6-monthly basis and included in the Golden Plains Shire Council annual report on an annual basis. This report highlights that of the 55 indicators reported, 19 of these showed positive changes against our 1920 Q2 result, and another 21 items were below the previous results. 15 items do not have any data to compare, as they've either been replaced compared to the previous indicator, or the way to calculate the result has changed. It should be noted, just in the case of statutory planning indicators, results are not yet available due to the difficulties experienced with new reporting software. This will be rectified and information provided as a supplementary report once available. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director O'Sullivan. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Whitfield.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Going through these performance reporting indicators, I noticed we had a green light on an item that I had previously researched and found that we were tracking against other councils we weren't really favourable in, and that was the animal rehoming percentage that are successfully rehomed. I have put this question with notice prior to Director Josipovic, and if I think it's worth him explaining the answer, because anyone like me that looked at the reports when you compare other councils, it would look pretty drastic from our part. So I'll get him to comment on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. In the 6 months to December, our records show that Council impounded 40 animals, and 12 of those being dogs and 28 being cats. A couple of things that impact our numbers and our statistics is, one, we have a policy of a free ride home for the first offenders. So if we find a registered animal at large that we can identify the owner, we will take it back to their owner first time and not impound it, so it doesn't get counted as a animal picked up and rehomed or taken back to the home. I mentioned the 28 cats. 27 of those cats in that reporting period were trapped at a property following a complaint from a neighbour about the number of feral cats. As authorised officers, our officers can determine if a cat is behaving aggressively, etc., that we take it straight to the vet. And in consultation with the vet, those feral cats are typically euthanised. So 27 of the 28 cats were taken to the vet, and it was agreed with the vet that they be euthanised because they were feral and aggressive behaving animals. And the 28th was taken to the pound, and ultimately it was euthanised as well. Whilst it's not a decision-making consideration for our officers, I think it's worth pointing out that if we had taken those 27 cats to the pound, it would have cost council about $6,750, and ultimately they probably would have been euthanised anyway. Whereas taking them straight to the vet cost us $810.
Any other questions, councillors?
Mayor, not so much a question, but just a couple of comments. I think a couple of very positive things is item G1, council decisions made at meetings closed to the public has decreased and should be acknowledged. I think that's a very positive result.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, if
it should be.
Apologise.
Move and second it.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just any questions directed to the directors.
Thank you.
At this stage. Thank you. So there's no other questions. Do I have a mover? Whitfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Of course, this document's necessary for us to identify both our strengths and weaknesses as a council. There are a couple of things I enjoyed seeing, like the resumption of the recycling services, which led to an improvement of waste being diverted from landfill. A couple other things like that were good. I think we had 19 improvements on the measurable factors. So overall, yeah, I'll accept the document as is. Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, just also agreeing with Councillor Whitfield about the curbside collection waste diverted from landfill was improved in the 2019-2020 result, which is a very good positive indicator. And also, as I said, council decisions made at meetings closed to the public has decreased and should be acknowledged as a very positive result as well, a very good increase in that indicator. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunningham. Is there any councillor who'd like to speak against the motion? Any councillor like to speak for? Councillor Whitfield, would you like to sum up? All right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 7.9, Council Plan 2017 to 2021 implementation, Quarter 2 update. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Madam Mayor. Again, this report is to note and recognise the achievements that have been made against the council plan actions for the second quarter from October 1, 2020 through to the 31st of December 2020. I will just highlight just a couple of achievements that have been made during this quarter, such as the Durrell Play Space upgrade was completed. Round 2 of the 2020 Community Strength Grants were awarded, with $71,928,000 provided to 17 successful community groups. The Golden Plains Farmers Market was recommenced in November 2020. Zoomia River Project, several youth programs were delivered. The official opening of the new floor at Haddon Recreation Centre. Inverleigh Structure Plan was submitted to the Minister. The Community Vision 2040 was developed and adopted, and a report produced and adopted, and the draft Community Engagement Policy developed and placed on public exhibition. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Sullivan. Any questions, councillors? No questions? Everyone's happy with what you've just read out? All right, do we have a mover to the motion? Cunningham. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe. Councillor Cunningham, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I think there's a lot of very good positive initiatives that took place. As councillors, we've been able to attend some of those, and the feedback from the community has been really good. And I think, the community really appreciate the efforts that have been put into some of these initiatives, and also the opportunity to have some good input. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak?
Oh, no, not really, thank you. All I'd like to say is, there's 40 actions there, and they're all definitely important anyway. So that's all I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Gamble.
Just like to note that despite some in the community having a perception that we don't do a lot, I think this report verifies that there's quite a lot going on in the community from that's being run by the council. So I'd just like to note that. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble. Anyone? Councillor Getson?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that too, noting that Zoomia River and whatever, it's just going to markets and whatever, it's to see how many good artists we've got in the Shire, and the how they're being brought together by the council staff, which I think is a wonderful way to go, and keep into the future. I think it's just a great way to let people. It's a big Shire, and we seem to be spreading it all over the Shire, which is wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Getson. Anyone else like to speak? No? If you would like to sum up, Councillor Cunningham,
thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing else to add. Thank you.
No worries. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 7.10, Melbourne Cup Public Holiday. Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report recommends Council to seek feedback from the community whether to observe the Melbourne Cup public holiday or another alternative for the next 4 years. Just for a little bit of background, last year 72 of the 79 Victorian councils observed the Melbourne Cup public holiday, and only 7 councils observed an alternative public holiday. And as our previous consultation was conducted 10 years ago for this council, it's recommended that council seek feedback from the community on their preference for an alternative arrangements for the public holiday. Options for the community to consider are as follows: observe the Melbourne Cup holiday across all parts of the Shire, continue to observe current arrangements, being the Geelong and Ballarat show days, or request another alternative, being perhaps the Geelong Cup Day, Ballarat Cup Day. Thank you.
O'Sullivan. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just a question regarding community engagement during this process. I personally believe that it is highly valuable during this process to get the feedback from both business owners and operators in the Shire. Just a question in regards to are we doing anything above and beyond to get that message directly to business owners and operators in the Shire?
Madam Mayor. Councillor Sharkey, there's absolutely, we can, in our regular community newsletter, as well as our business newsletter, is another way that we can engage with that group. So we'll ensure we do that in the next edition.
Thank you, Mr. Brussels. Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Any other questions, councillors? No other questions? All right. Do I have a mover for the motion put before us? Councillor Sharkey. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe. Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This will go out for public consultation and strongly stress that it is quite important to get the feedback of people in the Shire. As it has been highlighted in the report there is a significant amount of shires that do appreciate Melbourne Cup Day. It is an extremely challenging and confusing and strange day, and particularly speaking in Bannockburn, in that some businesses will close for Geelong Show Day, others will close for Geelong Cup Day, and others will close for the Melbourne Cup Day. So it is for business in the Shire quite a confusing day. So it would be very good to particularly hear, and very glad to hear that there are businesses will be there, because it would very much appreciate to hear from businesses what it means to them, and hopefully come to some resolution that sort of creates less confusion in the Shire. So really keen to get that out there and hopefully hear what our Shire has to say, and in particular businesses who are directly affected and probably affected by this more than most. So it would, looking forward to hearing the feedback. Going to be quite an interesting conversation.
Rowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to say, it'd be good to seek feedback. It's been about nearly 10 years now since we've had any feedback from, from people within the Shire. It'll be interesting, but I can understand why we've always we're a pretty big Shire, north to the south, and I can understand why in the past we've had our local Ballarat show day and our local Geelong show day, but things may change in the future. But looking forward to having a look at the feedback or listening to the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Is there any other councillors who'd like to speak against the motion? Councillor Gamble?
Sorry, not against. Just.
All right. Anyone against? Councillor Gamble for yes.
During our campaigning last year, I remember the first time I really became aware of the complications the current arrangements can lead to was when people were required to lodge their completed voting ballots at post offices, and it was a case that in some parts of the Shire they were open and some were closed, according to the where they were located, such as the line running north-south to mark the Ballarat show day runs along Wingill Road, Gumley Mount Mercer Road and Meredith Mount Mercer Road. They're all quite sort of difficult lines and borders to get your head around, and a lot of people were caught unawares of these arrangements last year.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Anyone else like to speak for or against? No? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour to go out to community consultation? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.11, State Electoral Boundary, the Redivision Council submission draft. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Madam Mayor. An opportunity is provided for Council to provide a submission to Stage 1 of the Victorian Electoral Commission in relation to the current state electoral boundaries prior to the next state government election in November 2022. A further opportunity for feedback will also be provided in June 2021. Golden Plains Shire is part of the Western Shire and split between two districts being Buninyong and Polwarth. Council's proposed submission recommends slightly expanding the Buninyong electoral boundary to the Rokewood-Skipton Road to incorporate the townships of Manabada and Rokewood, with the primary driver being that these towns being more aligned to the community interests of interest within the Buninyong electorate. This change will not impact on the maximum enrolled voters thresholds. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director O'Sullivan. Any questions, councillors? No questions? Okay. Do we have a mover? Councillor Whitfield and Councillor Gamble seconded. Whitfield and Gamble. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I agree that aligning these towns to the Buninyong electorate actually may enable more funding possibilities because they are more aligned with the criteria for that funding selection for those township profiles, and I believe it makes more geographical sense with the people that associate more with Ballarat and Buninyong than they would perhaps with Bannockburn for facilities and amenities. So I do think it's a good move. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gamble.
Councillor Whitfield stole my thunder, so to speak, when he said that it appears eminently sensible.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for? If not, I'll put Councillor Whitfield, would you like to sum up? No. All right, put it to the vote. Those all in favour? Carried. Item 7.12, the VAGO Independent Assurance Report to Parliament on Sexual Harassment in Local Government, December 2020. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In June 2020, Golden Plains Shire Council staff and councillors were invited to participate in a survey conducted by the Victorian Auditor General's Office on sexual harassment in local government. The audit was framed around the question, are Victorian local councils providing workplaces that are free from sexual harassment? Sexual harassment in the workplace is unlawful and can cause significant harm to those who experience it. It can also be costly for employers, exposing them to legal liability and increasing staff turnover. Under the Equal Opportunity Act 2010, employers must take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate sexual harassment in their workplaces. In June 2020, 75 out of the 79 councils took part in the VAGO survey on a voluntary basis, with just under 10,000 council employees and councillors responding. Golden Plains Shire council employees and councillors were invited to participate. In addition to the survey, VAGO also audited 5 councils as a spread of council type and size. In the audit, VAGO specifically looked at the prevalence and nature of sexual harassment in councils, council's policies, training and communication, the effectiveness of council's complaint handling. The audit report findings were released in December 2020, and VAGO concluded that councils were not providing workplaces which are free from sexual harassment, and that more than 1 in 4 survey respondents had experienced sexual harassment in the last 12 months. A snapshot of the report for Golden Plains Shire Council showed that we had a 30% response rate, so 63 staff, with 33% of respondents reporting experiencing sexual harassment in the last 12 months. 75% of respondents don't believe that the sexual harassment is a problem at council, and 83% believe that council takes sexual harassment seriously. VARGO has made a list of recommendations for Victorian local councils, and these recommendations were accepted by the 5 audited councils. And the key themes were recommendations about the prevalence of sexual harassment, with a focus on identifying risk factors and measurements and responses by councils. Recommendations about preventing sexual harassment relating to policies, staff training and organisational culture. Recommendations about responding to sexual harassment relating to reporting mechanisms, record keeping and complaints handling. Recommendations about councillors relating to councillor training and mechanisms for reporting and support. I will note council officers and council fully support the implementation of all the recommendations made by VARGO. A timetable has been developed to implement all of the VARGO recommendations as part of a broader update of the people and culture policies and procedures. And in addition, Council's newly developed corporate vision and values are embedded into everything we do and ensure that sexual harassment training is built into our mandatory training program and monitored through surveys as undertaken. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Councillor Cunningham.
Madam Mayor, Director Sullivan, just thank you for that report, and as is understanding is Council adopt all the recommendations, and it does take time sometimes to put policy and processes in place. So in the short term, can I just ask the question, what is Council proposing to address, or have they already addressed this issue in the meantime?
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Yes, so first and foremost was communication. So we have the CEO has addressed senior management and also the full management team around the outcomes of the report. And we note that we own the results. We accept what the results in the report is saying, and we'll be communicating the action plan out to the greater staff members and delivering on that program. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
Any other questions, councillors? No? All right. Do we have a mover? Councillor Sharkey. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This was a... I personally went through this and skim-read over the whole thing, and I was absolutely astonished by the figures and the numbers, and it left me extremely concerned. Layered on top of that, we've got events that have happened in the most highest of places in Australia this week, which sort of further highlights the issue of sexual harassment. It is something that nobody should accept whatsoever. So reading through these figures is mind-boggling. I think I made a couple of remarks regarding at our briefing regarding them, and I think there was two figures in there. It's 75% of people said that it's that they don't feel it's a problem, and I said at the time that therefore 25% believe it is a problem, which just as the director was speaking there, and I've got notes that contradict themselves. And one of the hardest or the difficult things through all this, reading all these figures, when you read that 33% of staff are experiencing sexual harassment, 14% don't know where to get help for, 12% of managers aren't confident in their ability to handle a situation. Those figures alone are extremely alarming. Two of the complaints in that report are directed at councillors, which is astonishing. We as councillors are at the top and should be the absolute leaders in areas such as this. But drilling the numbers and having a really hard think about it, and contradicting myself here, saying that 25% of people believe it's a problem, the report here on page 15 says that one person out of those 63 people, only one person believes that sexual harassment is a problem at this council. And that is quite astonishing when you break all the numbers. Only one person out of 63 and 63 out of 200 and whatever have taken part in the survey. I think there is what the way I read this report is there is a lot of confusion out there with staff, managers, in regards how to handle this. 15 people who don't know whether it's a problem. So they've filled out the survey, they've experienced or felt that there was sexual harassment, but they don't know. They don't know whether it's a problem or not. So it is extremely difficult to drill these figures and actually get a solid outcome. So I think my personal opinion, and I know it's not in any of the recommendations, the reports, is well, it's sort of it is in some of the reports recommendations, is that people need to feel comfortable to put these forward, and they may very well be questioning themselves whether it is actual sexual harassment or not. But if that person presents that information to the manager, and then it will come up through the managers and the senior staff and the CEO, then the CEO, the managers and the directors know how to handle the situation. But this report here doesn't give enough substance to actually, and we can sit here and I'm sure there'll be councillors saying, oh, there's 12 recommendations, oh, this is fantastic. It is the year 2021. No one needs to be told not to rape someone. No one needs to know. There's no policies, there's no implementation of, we've got recommendations here, training, promoting, encouraging, formal complaints, informal complaints, and record keeping of it. It should all be common sense by now, and it is clearly not. But I'd strongly urge those people to there may very well be two identified in this report, 2 councillors, and those 2 councillors may be absolutely unbeknown to what they have done right or wrong, what they have done wrong. They will sit here, and so will a lot of the staff that have caused some of this. There is some serious figures in there, and I'm not overlooking them. There's some, when you look at the whole sector, there's some appalling behaviour. There's some appalling behaviour by the public to councillors to staff to one another. It really needs. It is. I don't know. It is astonishing, disappointing, but I don't feel that the report there, which will tick all the boxes and everyone will be happy and move on and say, well, we've got some things there that will change the culture. Like, we shouldn't need that in the year 2021. And I think the only people that are making any change in the world right now on sexual harassment are those strong people that are actually standing up and identifying it. And I'd revert to those three women this week that have stood up against something that happened, and they're the people that make real change. It's extremely, just a really difficult report to get any substance out of. But fully support all the recommendations there moving forward, and it's good to have this conversation. It's extremely timely.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. Thanks, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not much more to add to Councillor Sharkey's words. One thing that I did pick up from Director O'Sullivan was in her talk was that we own it, and within the organisation, that's the first thing that needs to happen, is we need to own the results. Going forward, the only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to see all council directors and councillors take part in any planned workshops and training that's provided. Once again, leadership starts at the top and drives organisational culture. So yes, what Councillor Sharkey said is it's in this day and age, it's hard to believe this still happens, but when you look across the report, it's still widespread. So we've got to put everything in place that we can to address it and make sure that that all places within council, it's a place where people feel safe and can have those conversations if required, and know that there's a policy and a process in place to address their concerns. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? Jackie, would you like to sum up?
No, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think I've covered all points, and thank you.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 7.13, Councillor Code of Conduct. Thank you, Ms O'Sullivan.
Madam Mayor. The Code of Conduct and the Dispute Resolution Policy have been developed under the Local Government Act 2020 and the Local Government Governance and Integrity Regulations 2020. The purpose of the Code of Conduct is to set out the standards of conduct for councillors expected to observe in their performance of the role. It aims to promote fairness, objectivity, accountability, transparency in decision making, taking into account the diversity of interests and the needs of the municipal community. Encourage conduct that has regards for the opinions, beliefs and rights of others, promotes respect and dignity in the treatment of others, including members of the public, other councillors and members of council staff, ensuring councillors represent the interests of the municipal community and use their position to achieve the best outcomes for the municipal community. While the purpose of the dispute resolution policy is to work together with the Code of Conduct, it sets out the hierarchy of responses and procedural steps set out in the Local Government Act and Integrity Regulations when an allegation of misconduct, serious misconduct or gross misconduct is made against a councillor. It aims to ensure councillors know what to expect, including a councillor's right to procedural fairness. It should also be noted that, as per the requirements of the Local Government Act, that it is required for this Code of Conduct to be adopted by tomorrow, the 24th of February, and should this be adopted tonight, it will be signed formally by all councillors directly after the meeting. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Whitfield.
Madam Mayor. Director O'Sullivan, is it correct that down the track, if there are unintended consequences resulting from this Code of Conduct, that we're able to make amendments?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. I refer to Anne-Marie, if you'd like to add any further comment.
The statute provides for amendment at any time.
Any other questions, councillors?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor Sharkey.
Just out of curiosity and not expecting a per minute or per dollar cost, but in terms of us as Golden Plains Shire putting this document together, what sort of time and effort have we put into this document?
Through the Mayor. But the time would be over 80 plus, if not more, hours during the months of December and January due to the tight time frames, yes. And also the shortness in time and the seriousness and significance of the document. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Rowe.
You just got one here, Code of Conduct 6.4. Don't know whether you're familiar with it, Pip. The duties and functions of a councillor does not include the performance of any responsibilities or function of the CEO. I would have thought perhaps councillors would be responsible for the performance of a CEO and some of his function.
Thank you for the question. I'm just confirm the wording in that. I may need to take that question on notice. Sorry, I'll refer to Officer Bowie.
The wording of that, look, we can modify it if it's not clear. It, for memory, has come out of the reg. I think the expression, the way it's described, performance of any of the responsibilities or functions of the CEO is effectively saying if it falls within the CEO's duties and responsibilities under the Local Government Act, then there should be, council shouldn't be performing those functions and duties. But we can look at the wording if we need some alternative wording for clarity. But certainly, as it is, as I recall it, it's come from the reg. It appears as it has come from the regs.
I know in the past, if there's anything, go back a few years ago, if there's any thing that the CEO, anything happened with the CEO and he was dismissed, well then a lot of the cases the whole council was dismissed.
I think it's not really talking about the performance of the CEO, but it's the doing of the functions and duties of the CEO. So distinguishing between those two things. Perhaps the use of the word performance there is confusing, and we perhaps could look at substituting the language that is used for clarity.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No? If not, do we have a mover to the motion? Councillor Whitfield?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an alternate motion.
You may, yes.
That Council 1 adopt the Councillor Code of Conduct 2021 in Attachments 1, subject to changing the words in Clause 3.1 from will promote the Golden Plains Shire values to will endeavour to promote the Golden Plains Shire Council's values, and 2, adopt the Councillor Dispute Resolution Policy 2021 in Attachment 2.
We have a seconder, Councillor Gamble. Are there any councillors who'd like to speak to the motion?
Mover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just felt that this alternate motion, just some of the things in Clause 3.1 are what we might call aspirational, and yes, they will provide us opportunities to provide good examples and leadership, but replacing the word will or must just allows for that little bit more flexibility in our day-to-day routines. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble.
Thank you. I'd like to endorse Councillor Whitfield's sentiments there. Also, it should be pointed out that there was a fair bit of background consultation on this matter, which we, as a councillor, I'd like to commend the officers and the way it was handled, and with timely feedback and consultation that was appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble. Is there any...
Madam Mayor, could I make an amendment to the motion?
Yes.
The amendment that I'd like to make is just further adding to the current motion and leaving point number 1 and point number 2, but adding a point number 3, and that is to endorse writing to the minister to express concerns about the local government Victoria's failure to provide a model code of conduct with the core elements prescribed in the Local Government Act 2020 and Local Government Regulations 2020, and as a result, all 79 councils in Victoria were required to invest considerable time and resources to draft the contents of what could and should have been included in a model code of conduct.
Sharkey. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe. Would you like to speak, Councillor Rowe?
It sounds okay by me. Thank you.
May I speak to the motion?
Sharkey, you may now. Yes.
The reason for endorsing to write to the minister comes from my personal frustration on this matter. This is a document that has been well put together. We've had an experienced officer from scratch put this document together, has put in 80 plus hours, 2-3 weeks work into this document. That comes at a cost. That comes at a cost to us as ratepayers, which is the document. Document is good, well put together, but it's an absolute waste of time. absolute waste of time. Now, the Surf Coast, our neighbouring council who debated this item last week, they quoted $10,000. $10,000 they paid a lawyer to put this document together. We are fortunate here to have experienced staff and staff that don't need to resource or use consultate or to put that out to a lawyer. So we have done this cheap, but it has cost us 2 or 3 weeks' work that could have been put in somewhere else. Now, that may seem an insignificant amount of money, but that is $10,000. I'm going to quote Surf Coast's figure. I'm sure there's councils out there that have done it for less like us and other councils that have done it for more. 79 councils across Victoria is $790,000. It is an absurd waste of money, waste of time and effort when the state government could have provided an overarching document and it could have gone out, and I disagree with Councillor Gamble's comments that there's good consultation. I don't believe there has been good statewide consultation amongst the state. It should have been discussed from the top down. This should have been put on our table, and we shouldn't have even been able to debate it as councillors. It should be what's good for Golden Plains should be good for Surf Coast and good for any council in Victoria. We've got the state government that put a massive amount of investment last year into shared services. Just reading a report in today's newspaper, the Wellington Council have just returned $4.3 million back to the state government. And that money was supposed to be used for shared services. This is an example where we, as an industry right across Victoria, could have saved ratepayers nearly $1 million. And in a time when money is scarce and a shire like us, $10,000 is a significant amount of money. So whilst I agree with the overarching document, the Code of Conduct and its intents and everything it does, extremely frustrated, and I wish that councillors will support this addition to further strengthen the motion, but to also, as a small council, express to the Minister and express to the government that they are using us as a cost-shifting exercise. They could have saved ratepayers across Victoria nearly $1 million. And this, for us, should be low-hanging fruit. This should be day-to-day operations to have paid a solicitor in Melbourne tens of thousands of dollars, or the same solicitor that could have put that together for Surf Coast to distribute that across the whole industry and save us a significant amount of money. So that is my personal frustration on this Code of Conduct. So hopefully I get the support of fellow councillors to leave that as an amendment to Councillor Whitfield's motion.
Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak?
I think Alan's covered all bases there.
Thank you.
Well put together, Councillor Sharkey.
Is there anyone like to speak for the motion? Anyone like to speak? Thank you, Councillor Whitfield.
Madam Mayor, just in general, and I concur with Councillor Sharkey's comments on, in that regard, government does legislate that we have this Code of Conduct. I personally feel it's a shame that so much of it seems dedicated to councillor staff interactions. Obviously the past probably dictates where we sit on this, but I can assure all staff they've got my and our fellow councillors' respect going forward, and those inclusions are, I suppose, are statewide and necessary. And the second part of the accepting the councillor dispute resolution, I just want to say that we probably need those processes in place should the needs arise, and it's good to have that there. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I can just endorse Councillor Whitfield's sentiments, but also I'd just like to acknowledge the time and effort and the quality of work that Councillor Officer Anne-Marie has put into developing this document and always being available for questions from councillors. Thank you.
Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for?
Madam Mayor, I was just speaking for it personally on this whole Code of Conduct. It has been quite a difficult task. My bone of contention has been around what I have described, but I was very close to not supporting this as almost a protest vote to our deadline, which is in a few hours' time tomorrow. So it is. Yeah, I think my concerns were that this was a missed opportunity by us, appreciating both existing councillors and new councillors had a considerable amount on the table over the past few months. This is something here which I think I speak on probably behalf of every councillor here, that they wish they probably had have been able to have some more time to give a little bit more. But I think that Councillor Whitfield's question earlier covers that, in terms that we do have the opportunity to visit it, use it as a counselling session for councillors, and also if there's something there we as a council or as an industry we can change. But yeah, something I wish had have been a little bit more fluent. But it is a live and moving document, so we are able to change that. But yeah, very close to not supporting this, but I think with the inclusion of that, I'm very much happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sharkey. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So now we are back to the substantive motion. Okay. Can you repeat what that one is? Thank you, Mr. CEO.
The amendment was adopted to include item 3 and go back to the original motion, which was items 1 and 2, now with the inclusion of item 3. Which was originally moved by Councillor Whitfield and seconded by Councillor Gamble.
Thank you. Councillor Whitfield, would you like to speak to the original?
It was on the amendment.
We voted on the amendment.
No, I think everything's needed to be said. It has been covered between all motions, amendments and alternatives that have been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, who was the second one? Councillor Gamble. Thank you. There it is. Yep. Councillor Gamble, would you like to speak?
No, I'll let it rest. Thanks.
Thank you. You don't need to. Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Confused myself then. Item 7.4, Community Engagement Policy. Thank you, Director-elect.
Madam Mayor, Golden Plains Shire Council is committed to engaging with residents and stakeholders when making decisions that impact on the community. The Community Engagement Policy presented to you will strengthen this commitment and provide guidance to staff when developing and implementing community engagement. The Community Engagement Policy has been developed following sector-wide better practice forums and workshops led by Local Government Victoria and in collaboration with staff from across Council. The policy provides a clear and succinct process to ensure deliberative engagement practices of Council are well planned, inclusive, accessible and appropriate, and uses the International Association of Public Participation, IAP2, spectrum of public participation, which is the industry standard for determining both the level of engagement and impact community engagement will have on decision making. The draft policy was made available to the community to provide feedback between the 26th of November 2020 and the 11th of January 2021. As no submissions were received by the community, no further changes have been proposed to the final policy. As part of the new requirements introduced under the Local Government Act 2020, all councils are required to adopt and maintain a community engagement policy, with the first policy adopted on or before the 1st of March 2021, and the adoption of the policy tonight would meet this requirement. The recommendation before you is that Council adopt the community engagement policy as attached. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? No questions? Okay, do I have a mover to the motion? Councillor Whitfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sharkey. Thank you. Councillor Whitfield, if you'd like to speak.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm a big fan of this engagement policy and the strategies that are going to follow. There are policies even at the moment that are being worked on that, thanks to this policy, will guarantee the appropriate level of engagement is afforded to the public and therefore lead to a better community satisfaction and outcomes. I think it's a very encouraging document. Thank you.
Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's, yeah, it is a hugely important document, and it is hopefully further strengthens our community engagement. I think tonight has highlighted a couple of areas where we as councillors are guided by the community engagement. So hopefully this policy helps in obtaining what sometimes can be an additional 1 or 2 people's input, which has a huge change to the decisions we make. We as councillors make our decisions based on community feedback, and without community engagement, we get no community feedback. So hopefully this further strengthens. It is something that we need to, as a growing shire, look at and keep updating as the years go by. As Councillor Whitfield has highlighted, hopefully this is something that further strengthens what we have there, this policy. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? Not Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just confirm that I think it's a very strengthened document, and I think already in the first 3 or 4 months of this council's term, we've already seen the need and support from the community to engage with councillors with what we've done so far. So yes, I think it's really going to just strengthen and meet a lot of the requirements and community expectations.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Gamble? Oh, sorry, I seen Councillor Gamble first.
Thank you. With this policy, we can assure the citizens of Golden Plains Shire that we're serious about engaging and listening to the community. We've been getting out and doing a fair bit in the last couple of months, and we've got plans to continue that on. And I think we've all made ourselves quite accessible to the public, and are quite open to hearing what the needs, wants, desires and aspirations of our community are.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. Councillor Rowe?
Yep. It's a very important document, this policy, no doubt about it. The community are our people, and those people, they're our ratepayers and they're our residents. And without them, we wouldn't even have a darn shire. So it's great to have this policy, and I look forward to getting out more and engaging with the community in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Anyone else like to speak for or against? If not, Councillor Whitfield, would you like to close the debate?
Quickly, thanks, Madam Mayor. This policy will determine the level of engagement that the organisation, not just us councillors getting out and about, but the level that the organisation reaches and uses to effectively gain engagement and feedback. And by having those templates in place, there's no I thought we did it this way type of scenario. It's going to work out very well, I think. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.15, Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This policies, in order to achieve our compliance with the Stage 3 implementation of the phased introduction of the Local Government Act 2020, we are required to review and adopt our gift policy by the state government's requirement date of the 24th of April 2021. I will note that Council last adopted its Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy at the 17th of December 2019 Council meeting, and as part of that was a very extensive review of the policy to align with the state government's Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy Guide and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning's Hospitality Model Policy. Although it wasn't mandated, it was seen as a way to move forward in contemporary public sector best practice guidelines and achieve community expectations around around gifts, benefits and hospitality and how they're managed. The policy was also presented at the Audit and Risk Committee on the 9th of February 2021, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Rowe?
Yeah, Director, I'd just like to ask you a question, if I could, please. ceremonial gifts. Do they become the property of the Golden Plains Shire at all times?
Yes, I confirm they do, yes.
If you give a tree to someone, they put it in their backyard, it becomes a property of Golden Plains Shire.
Through you, Madam Mayor, these are gifts being received by the council, not gifts being presented by the council.
I read it the wrong way around then.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit more.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm taking Councillor Rowe's question about if we were to gift a tree, like at our citizenship ceremonies to someone, would that tree be ours forever and a day? And I'm saying this policy doesn't apply to that situation. If a person, a visitor from another country, were to come for some official ceremony at our council and gift us something, a present, a pen, something of significance that we might put into our display cabinets, it would then become a gift of the council, not of the mayor or of a councillor.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Rowe. Any other questions, councillors? No? If not, do we have a mover? Councillor Sharkey? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe? Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. This is by and large sort of housekeeping item. It doesn't, as a previous councillor, it doesn't feel that long ago when we actually really debated this in depth. This was last adopted on the 17th of December, so pretty much just over a year ago. So it's pretty straightforward and under the new Act, putting that through. So happy to move that and adopt that recommendation.
Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak?
I think Councillor Sharkey said it all. It's just pretty straightforward and just a bit of good housekeeping. Thank you.
Any councillors like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Whitfield?
I'd just quickly like that this document provides a level of public transparency, which I think is a very valuable thing. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sharkey, would you like to close the debate?
No, Madam Mayor, I don't think there's much of a debate there.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.16, Audit and Risk Committee Report for the 2nd of December 2020. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will take the report as read, just noting that this is a summary of the business from the 9th of February 2021 Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and also noting that a number of the reports in tonight's agenda were presented at the committee meeting. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the reports, councillors? No? Thank you. Okay, so do we have a mover to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Getson. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the meeting, I did send a short update, snapshot of the meeting. Couple of things, if I could. Director O'Sullivan, I'm just wondering, can you give us an update or a quick snapshot regarding the transfer of the...
Point of order.
Sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
You can.
Yeah, you can. You can't ask a question now.
Thank you.
Get
My apologies, Director O'Sullivan. Yes, it was a very positive update with the transfer of the Bannockburn Children's Service Long Day Care Centre over to the new owners, which is going to result. There's been a really good feedback from the parents that have transferred the children over. Also, I think that was about it. I think the Viago we covered that. That's fine. Thank you.
Like to speak?
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the motion, for the motion? Would you like to sum up, Councillor Cunningham?
Nothing else, Mayor.
No worries. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.17, Councillor Expenses and Meeting Attendance Quarter 2 Report. Thank you, Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will take this report directly as read and answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? No? Okay, do I have a mover? Councillor Sharkey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Whitfield. Councillor Sharkey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, again, straightforward document here. I believe this continues the trend for myself on council for the last 5 years. These reports that have come forward have always highlighted extremely high attendance by councillors, and also our expenditure budget is always well below the budget. So probably an area we in councillors, as councillors, should look at making sure that we get good training and all that. There is a budget there for us. It's something that I think on all my time on council has been a well represented figures. And appreciating most councillors take a lot of these expenses and that at their own cost. So full credit, to each and every councillor. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Whitfield.
Thanks. I just concur with Councillor Sharkey.
Thank you. Is there any councillors who'd like to speak against the motion? Any councillors like to speak for the motion? No. Okay, Councillor Sharkey, would you like to sum up?
With no debate there, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to put it.
Motion, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 8, notices of motion. We have none. Thank you. Nil. Item 9, petitions. Nil. Urgent business. Nil. Item 10, confidential reports for decision. Nil. So we will now close the meeting at 8:24 p.m. Thank you.